What's going on, guys? I'm Bill and welcome to Bill's How To. Today I'm going to show you guys step by step how to transform an area from this into this. Let's get straight into it, guys. Let's do this. So for today's video, I'm going to show you step by step how to assemble and install an Ikea kitchen. We've got a butler's pantry that we're working on here. So we want something nice, but we don't have to spend too much money. We're going to try and save as much money as possible here. So I'm going to be doing it all myself. I'm going to show you guys how to do it so you can do it yourself from home as well. Because it's a butler's pantry, we don't need an oven, cooktop and range hood. We're just going to be installing a sink, stone bench tops and all the cabinetry. So this little area here is going to be perfect to use Ikea kitchens. I'm not too familiar with the build quality, so I'm not too sure what that's like, but we're going to learn as we go. With regards to Ikea, the reason why I've chosen them, obviously they're cheaper than most other places. Everything is in stock, so you can design it all online, pick it up on the same day if you like. Their profiles and colors pretty large variety, to be honest, so you're going to have a hard time not liking something. You're going to find something that you like. If you guys want to see a separate video on how to design or how to measure up your Ikea kitchen or anything else, let me know in the comment section and we'll leave that for another video. For today, we're going to be installing everything here. Skirting boards need to be removed because our base cabinets need to go hard up against that wall. That's going to be the first thing that I'm doing. Electrician's coming to add a few more power points here, so I'm going to show you guys how to remove this skirting board and then we're going to jump straight into the assembly of our cabinets. So just quickly before we get started, I'll show you guys the layout here. It's a little bit of a strange design which made things a bit more difficult. So we walk into the butler's pantry here. It's got a recessed area on the right, which is perfect. Our bench is going to go all the way along there, all the way around, and then we've got a little nook here. So you can see there we've got a wall right on the edge, which made things a little bit more tricky for me. And the reason for that is the bench top's going to be pretty much about midway here. So I need to make sure that whatever I open up here from the cabinets is going to have enough clearance. So what we're going to do in this section here is I'm going to cut this with the reciprocating saw. Cut that skirting board right there because I don't know the exact size of the cabinets as yet. So we'll just cut it right there. Pull this skirting board all out from here, all the way around, and then once again we'll cut it over here as well, leaving enough space so that I can perfectly cut that later on down to size. Alright, so to remove the skirting boards is pretty simple, especially in this case here. I'm not too concerned about damage. I'm not going to reuse it. You take your Stanley knife or your utility knife, you want to just cut that right on the edge. Same thing here in the corner, because that's all got caulking all through it. So that's going to help it all separate. Once again, I'm not too concerned about damage here. So anything that does peel off, I'm not too concerned. We're going to remove this probably about up to here. Should give me plenty of clearance. Alright, so the easiest way to remove this now is to take a 7-in-1, 100-in-1, 1000-in-1. Simply just put that on top, tap it down. And then what you're going to do is just apply a little bit of pressure, take another one, put it next to it, and then start peeling back. Now, if you are concerned about damage, you can put something behind this to make sure that it doesn't actually break the plasterboard behind it, but in my case, I'm not really too concerned. Might get lucky anyway if we remove it slowly. So once you've got a decent amount off the wall, you can then use your fingers, peel that all back, and then just lift up in the corner and you've got your piece there removed. We're going to repeat the same process all the way along here. So I'm going to show you how to assemble one of the cabinets. Once you do or see one of them, you'll be able to do all of them. They're pretty much exactly the same. Try and assemble it on a carpeted surface so you don't damage the face of your material. If not, at the very least, open up your box nice and cleanly cut, not like I've done, and you can assemble it onto the actual box. Now all we need is a drill or a screwdriver. In my case, I'll be using a drill, so just be very careful when using a drill so that you don't strip the screw into the actual fitting. So just don't over tighten it. We've got a box of goodies here, so we'll open up this one here as well and put it on a side. They can stay on the side. It comes in pretty much 4 pieces. So we've got 4 boards that you can see coming out now. These are our top and bottom panels. And this one here is our side panels. You'll know it's a side panels because it's got a whole range of holes along the side so that you can adjust your shelves. And And now we've got our backing. Pretty much the worst thing about this whole kitchen so far is this backing. As you can see there, it's a 5mm MDF board by the look of it. Not the best thing. I really wish it was a solid piece. I'm not sure why they haven't done a solid piece. Probably cheaper, save on weight, but for anybody out there, solid piece would be much better, but that's what we've got to work with so far. So we're going to take our 2 side pieces, put them on the ground. I'll bring you guys in a bit closer and I'll show you how fast it is to assemble this. So we're going to open up our first bag of goodies here, and what we're going to do is take out some dowel bits. So we might as well take out all of them now. The instructions tell you to do everything one at a time, but I'm going to show you guys how to do this real quick. So 4 pieces of dowel for each board. That is the dowel, in case you're not sure, just a little piece of timber or wood. All right, and we also need 8 of these screws here. So these are the locking screws for our cam. So pull out 8 of those. All right, so we're going to take our dowel pieces. You'll notice there's 4 larger holes on either board. Drop those dowel pieces there straight into those. And now we take our little locking screws here, and they're going to go literally right beside it. So just thread them on by hand first, then follow through with a screwdriver or a drill. If you are using a drill, just be very, very careful once again. Try and control the amount of speed and torque through the actual trigger. So just press it a little bit slower than you normally would, and you shouldn't have an issue. Alright, so now we've got all of those installed, what we're going to do next is we're going to take our brackets. Now with these brackets here, these are the brackets that get hung up onto the wall. The screws that we're going to use for this one here are 6 of these short little fat ones. So they're the only ones that are in the bag that are short and fat. Grab 6 of these ones here. So when I install these screws, I only go down halfway at a time. That's to help center everything. That's now done. We'll do the same thing on the other side. So now we can move on to our top and bottom piece. Now if you have a look at the board, you'll notice there's a little groove on either side, and that is for our backing. So all you need to do is just basically make sure that our little groove here lines up with the groove on our side. We're going to take this one here and just drop that one there straight over the top. Push it down into place. Do the same thing on the other side. You can't get this wrong because everything has to line up with the grooves. Drop that down, and now we're going to install our cams and lock these ones here into place. So now we're going to install the cams, making sure that this face here is facing outwards. We're going to take this, drop it into place on both sides, and then once again take your drill or your screwdriver, lock that in by turning it over to the right. We're going to turn our board around and do the same thing on the other side. So now we can take our backing, remembering this one here is the one that's really, really thin. Slide that one there in through the grooves, all the way down, line it up with our bottom groove as well. Then we can take our other piece and once again, line everything up. Easiest way is to put one side in, then swing it across to the other side. Once it's all lined up, push that down just a little bit, and then we're going to install our locking cams once again. Alright, so now we're on our last step, which is to put this down on its face, meaning your backing is now exposed. So now we're going to take these little spaces here. This is going to be installed on the bottom, and that is because these ones here are protruding out off the wall. So in order to level everything out, stick one on this corner, one on that corner, and we're going to take this little packet of nails here and we're going to nail everything into place. So to install all these nails, you'll notice here on the edge there's a little dotted line right in the middle. That's the location that you drive your nails in. That's going to help you center everything and reduce actually driving the nail out to the side. So it's a pretty smart idea right there. This one here takes just one single nail on either side. You can put a square in there and make sure everything's nice and square. And once that's done, that is now one cabinet completely assembled, ready to go, apart from the shelf and the doors. I'm going to go through and assemble the rest of them, which hopefully shouldn't take me too long. Make sure you keep the rest of the bag of goodies that you've got and your little cover plates, because we're going to use them later on. So 5 hours later, I finally got all my cabinets assembled. You heard correct, 5 hours working straight on all this assembly here. We've got roughly 13 to 15 cabinets, and I wanted to add this into the video because anybody out there that's curious, how long is it going to take you to assemble all the cabinets for your kitchen? We've got 13 to 15 cabinets here, and it took me 5 hours straight working on my own. So it can be done by yourself. You just need to put aside a lot of time. So it took me 5 hours. If you put aside a whole day just for assembly, I think you'll be pretty safe with that. And I don't think you'd want to do any work after that anyway. Alright guys, so it's now time to install our rail so that we can attach our cabinets to the wall. Ikea have a very interesting little system here. Rather than individually attaching every cabinet to the wall, to the studs on the wall, what we do instead is we've got a big ledger or big rail that gets attached to the studs on the wall all the way across, and then our individual cabinets can actually hook on to that rail. So the upside about that is it's going to be much, much faster. There's no weight that we have to carry while we're trying to screw everything into the wall. And we can also slide everything across so that it gives us a bit of playroom to maneuver things around. Now our bottom cabinets are going to be installed at 820 off the ground. Our top cabinets, that's all going to depend on the layout that you have. But in my case, we've got a big pantry that runs along the left-hand side here, and it's 2200 high. So our top ledger or top rail is going to be 2 centimeters higher than that. So it's going to be 222. Mark it for your bottom of the rail. Down here, it's an 80 centimeter cabinet. Add that 2 centimeters, becomes 82, and that's going to be the bottom of our rail. That's going to leave about 80 mil underneath for your kickboard to be installed as well, and your legs, which we're going to do. Now, what we have to find is the highest point of the floor. Here, it's pretty level all the way around. I think it's just about 5 mil out on one side. So we're going to quickly check which side was the highest side, and that's where we're going to actually zone in our laser level here to the highest side, and that way we're going to make sure that we don't have to cut anything for the kickboards, and everything's going to be nice and level. Obviously here I've got a laser level, so that's going to make things much easier and faster and more accurate. Rather than holding a level, you can do it with a level. I've done it many times, but this is going to make my life much easier. So just in case you're confused with your levels, trying to find the highest point of the flooring, I've got my laser level here set at 820. This section here is the highest point in the room, but just in case you're not sure, you can see there 820. We'll check in another area. You can see there it's a little bit above 820 now, and what that means is it's just basically a low spot. So if I lift the tape measure off the ground a little bit, you can see now we've got a little bit of clearance underneath, probably about 3 to 4 mil underneath. So that's a low spot there. Come back to this section here. If we check this one here, once again, we've got about 4 to 5 mil. Not too big of a difference, but if you can't squeeze that kickboard in at the end, you're going to wish that you actually leveled it out. So here you can see these are all low spots. That section there is the highest point of the flooring, and that's why we've started our measurement here. So now I've got my first rail cut. What I need to do is locate all the studs. Now you can use a stud finder, which is going to be your best option. If not, you can try your luck and try with the tapping method. If not, you're going to have 1,000 screws in here. So good little investment. You can buy a cheap one for like $10, $15. Definitely worth it. We're going to locate all our studs. You can see we've got one right here on the edge. So I'll just mark this one here and here. Might actually bring it down below the line. Make it a little bit easier so it's on the edge of that power point right there. So this part here is a stud. We've got here in the corner. So this whole section. Once again right here. And the reason why this is important is the rail needs to actually be screwed into studs. Now, Ikea says that you have to put an anchor every 30 centimeters, which isn't possible because your stud distance pretty much in every country is more than that. And in order to fix that, what they'd suggest is putting an anchor in, like a drywall anchor, which isn't really going to hold very much weight. So I've got another trick to get around that so that we can support this as much as possible. So it looks like we've got our little section here once again. And I'll show you guys how to add a few more screws into your rail so that you can make sure that you've got enough support. So I've seen a lot of people put anchors all the way through, which each one probably holds about 20-30 kilos, not the best option. Always go for the stud that's going to carry the most weight, and you're better off putting 2 screws into the stud, which is what I'm actually going to do in order to actually distribute that weight and be able to take on that load. So these rails come with these little brackets. Make sure you install these as well. They're not only going to secure everything, but you can also make minor adjustments by tapping them over to the side and lifting it or lowering that down as needed. Now, if you've got a stud location where you've got no holes, what you have to do in this case is pre-drill this area and drill straight through into the stud. That's going to be the best way to do it, and you won't need one of these washers or these brackets anymore. We're going to go straight through. In this particular case, we've got a specialty screw here from Bremick. These ones here, I've had actually a lot of them stored in my garage. Had a lot of them sent out to me from Bremick. The upside about these ones here is they can go through timber, they can go through metal, they can go through concrete, masonry. One screw that does the whole lot. Thank you very much, Bremick. So we'll go straight through here. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to go one on top and one on the bottom. That's going to help that spacing issue. All right, so we'll take that screw and drive it straight through. It is pretty thick still. Make sure everything's still lined up, which it is. And now we're going to double up on these screws. So you can put one straight into the rail, or you can put one underneath the rail right here. That's going to do the same thing. We might actually go underneath the rail so that we don't get in the way of any of those brackets. And that's now completely supporting underneath the bracket, so it's going to take the weight going down as well as this screw here. So repeat the process all throughout this whole rail. So I've moved the laser level up, and as you can see there, we've now marked this one here for our top cabinets. This one here was marked at 2220, remembering to start off on the high point of our floors. Measure that one, and it's all been lined up all the way around. So I've gone all the way through, marked out all my stud locations, and we're just going to basically repeat the same process that we did for our bottom rail. Now, if you notice over here, this section doesn't go all the way through because here we've got just our base cabinets that go up to the benchtop level. This one here, we've got a pantry that runs all the way up, which means it gets attached from the top. So every cabinet here gets attached from the top. So for this particular one, we only need a rail on top and not on the bottom. Alright guys, so all the rails are now finally installed. A couple things that I learned. 90% of those holes that are on the rail don't line up with the stud, so be prepared that you're going to have to either drill a pilot hole through the steel and then follow through with the actual screw, or you can buy one of those screws that I just showed you guys, which I was lucky to have them in the garage. They went through the steel, plasterboard and timber behind it. Something else that I learned is that it's a lot harder to do when you're working on your own. I thought it would be pretty easy, but this is actually pretty thick gauge steel, so it's not the easiest to hold up with one hand and drill with the other, but we managed and we've got it done. There's a little gap here up on the top corner. There's no hook up on that cabinet there, that particular one, so rather than buying another rail, I was able to just leave a little gap there. I could have even cut it right where that stud is, but that's going to absolutely do nothing whether I've got something there or not. There's no weight going on that section. So that's about it. Time for the fun part now, which is hanging up the cabinets, which hopefully shouldn't take too long if everything goes smooth. I'm going to start off with the upper cabinets, large pantry one here because I'm going to need the most amount of room to get in. That one's going to be pretty heavy as well, so we'll see how I travel doing that on my own as well. Corner one up here, we're going to install that one as well afterwards because that's a large heavy one as well. Going to need the wiggle room, and then the rest of them I should hopefully be able to squeeze them all through. So the first cabinet is the pantry. We need to hook it onto the track, and then I'm going to slide it in towards the back side of that wall there. So it's a little bit hard to see and grip it at the same time, but we'll try and see how we go. Check both sides, make sure they're in. I can see this one here isn't actually in, so we'll swing this one here up, drop it back down, and that is now sitting on the track. Yep, so both sides are in. Now we can just pivot this a little bit back and we'll slide it across. So for the meantime, I'm going to leave this hard up against the wall. We do have a filler panel that needs to be installed here, but we'll leave that till right at the end. I just want to get all these cabinets in. Alright, so now time for this corner cabinet. Alrighty, that one's in. So before we hang the base cabinets, what we want to do is just put the base for our feet. So these ones here are pretty simple. They simply just click in, line them up with the holes, push them all in. We're not going to put the actual feet on just yet, because if you're moving the cabinet around, there's a good chance you're going to break the feet, and then you're going to have to go for another trip all the way to Ikea just to get some feet. So what we're doing is just putting on these base plates, because that's the most difficult part. Anywhere that you can't reach, you might have to put one of these feet. For example, the corner cabinet, that one's going to be a little bit hard to get your arm all the way in. But to put these feet on, very, very simple. Just simply click them on, adjust them up and down, nice and simple. So this is the easy part, but getting in these base plates here for our feet, that's probably going to be the hardest part. So now that we've got this, we can start installing or hanging our base cabinets. So we're going to start off with this larger one first, get the worst one out of the way, and always try and start in the corner or the largest pieces. A little bit awkward to carry. And we just got to line up these brackets once again. That's one. Might have to push it in just a little bit more. Alright. That one's all good. That one's all good. And this one here is all good. So, alright, we've got this one here installed. This is why I said to put the base cabinets, the feet first, because it's going to be very, very hard to reach under there. I'm going to struggle to get to that last foot. Alright, so now we need to measure our hot and cold and our drainage for our holes that need to be drilled out. So the easiest way to do this is I've brought the cabinet as far back as I can. I'm going to measure off the cabinet next to it, and we're going to take our measurements to the center of our points. So this one here is 110, 220, and we also need to factor in the thickness of the actual cabinet itself. So this cabinet here is about 18 mil. So if we round it off, we'll be left with about 85 and 205. So we need to transfer those measurements over to the back of the board here. We also want to check the drop. So if I take something fairly straight, drop that straight across both of these, measure from the top of the cabinet, we've got there 330. So if I measure down 330 as well, that'll help me mark up those locations. We also need to check for our floor waste. So once again, measure off the cabinet. We've got there 300 to the center, and we need to factor in the thickness of the board once again, which in this case was 18 millimeters. So if we mark that one there at 280, that should be fine. We're going to cut it a little bit larger, and we're going to put a cover plate over it as well. So off the wall, this one here is 90 off the wall, but we also need to factor in that this sits off the wall as well. So we've got about 20 mil that it's sitting off the wall, with that little spacer down the bottom there. Plus we've got that backing as well. So we're going to take 20 mil off that 90, which gives us 70, and we'll transfer those measurements over to this cabinet. Alright, so I've got my hot and cold marked up. I'm just going to quickly drill these ones here out, then I'll flip the cabinet over and do the floor waste. Alright, so the cabinet's a little bit hard to get in because of this pipe here, so what I'm going to do is cut it down low, drop a coupling on there, and then I'll slide the pipe in through the top once the cabinet's in. So we just need to chop this one here down, put some primer on, and then glue the fitting down. Perfect. So I've glued the top piece into the coupling as well. All the cabinets are now in. What we need to do next is attach all the cupboards to each other. So we need to shuffle them over, get rid of any of this spacing that we've got here, shuffle them completely over, 4 screws on each side of the panel into the one next to it. So that's going to secure everything in nicely. You can hold them by hand if you like after you shuffle them over, but using clamps is going to be a lot easier. So I've been trying out the screws that Ikea gave me, but these ones here are absolutely horrible. They're stripping out, so make sure you get yourself some good screws, especially when you're attaching the cabinets to one another. You want to countersink them just a little bit, and then we're going to put a white sticker over the top later on. So when you countersink it, it's going to look like this. You can see there just below the surface, and then we put our sticker straight over the top. Then you can take your little white stickers and place them straight over the top. So we've now got everything screwed in together. The only one that hasn't been attached is this end panel, which is the long pantry here. We need to put an end panel along here so everything ties in nicely, and we need to do a couple measurements here. Now the sheet comes at about 620 wide, but we need to cut it down so that it's going to be level with the doors. So I'll just show you guys what I mean. I've got a little door panel here. So when a door's in the closed position, it's going to be sitting on that edge, so we need the overhang of the actual end panel to come out and be flush with that door panel. So I'll quickly put this one here down and show you guys. This here is a little offcut of our end panel. So what we need to do is make sure of exactly how much our end panel needs to have of an overhang. The easiest way to work this out is by actually attaching the doors. So I'm going to attach the doors on this outer pantry here. I'll attach all the doors so that I can get my exact measurements. We'll cut it down. I know the height is exactly 2200, so I can pre-cut that now. So once I've got that down at 2200, I'll put the doors on, and then we'll measure up and see how much of an overhang we need for our end panel. So I've now got these 2 doors here installed. I'll show you guys later on just how easy these are to install. They're honestly the easiest doors I've ever installed. But anyway, so now we've got everything measured up. I've checked my clearance. We're actually 5mm short, which is perfect. That means it's going to sit 5mm off the wall here. This splashback is all going to be tiled anyway. So now that we've got everything in line, I've also put a little block of timber underneath here. That's going to give me a little bit of support to make it a bit easier. Just clamp that down to the bottom so we can put that end panel in there, rest it up against the side, and I can screw it all into place. Alright, so something I forgot to do, if we have a look at the bracket up here, that rail that we installed on the wall, it is actually in the way. So what we have to do is just notch out this little section here. Doesn't have to be exact because nobody's going to see this area. It's going to be all concealed. So if we go somewhere around here. Alright, so I've lined everything up with the face of the door now. If I open it up, I put a little pencil marking in there as a reference point. So I can tap that one there back in place, clamp it down, and then I can put some screws through it. Now if you're drilling through just a single panel like I've got here in the middle, you need to use the screws that it comes with, otherwise they're going to pop out the other side. But in this case here I've got 2 panels down the bottom, so I'm going to sandwich these together using a longer screw. Alright, so now I've got this end panel completely installed. Perfect fit. If you take a block of timber or anything that's straight across from the door over to the end panel, 100% perfect. Very happy with that. That's all lined up perfectly. At this point, this is probably the best time now to reinstall all the feet under the base cabinets, to make sure that you don't forget that and don't put any extra weight on the cabinets without the feet on there. Line it up, spin it down, put a bit of tension, drop down the cap. So now we need to lock in the cabinets onto the rail. We use this little plastic fitting right here. That slides in onto the bottom right there. And then we take a screwdriver and we just turn that one there to the right, and that locks it into place. So now we can put our cover plate on. You'll notice one side has a groove and the other one doesn't. The groove side goes over our little bracket here. So we just simply slide that over the top into the corner, and that's now ready to go. Repeat the process on all the cabinets. Alright guys, so it's now time to do our filler panels. So we've got 3 sections that need a filler in there. We've got a little gap here on the side. Now this is what happens when it's not a custom made kitchen. Obviously everything isn't made to fit, but it's just a little problem for a very low price. We've got another one here. So you can see I've got a piece of timber in there just temporarily. I'm checking to see what can fit in there. And we've got another one down here. So this is where it becomes a little bit tricky, a little bit more complicated, and the profile that you pick on your door is going to make a massive difference. And I'll show you guys why, in case you're looking at purchasing some doors and you're trying to figure out what's going to be best for you, not just aesthetically, but also for installation. So here we've got a molded door with some little grooves on here on the edge. You can see it tapers off. I'll come in a little bit closer for you guys. It tapers off, and this is very important for this door. I honestly didn't pick it for this reason, but you guys are going to see why this is a good option in a second. So the thickness of the door and the thickness of the filler panel is different. This is where the biggest issue comes. They should have just made them the same size. It would have resolved all of these problems. But anyway, so the actual door itself is about 20 mil. This one here is about 14. So we've got roughly about 6 mil in variance. And if you had any other profile on this door, especially anything that's got a sharp squared edge here on the side, you're going to notice that big drop on the side there, and it's going to look like a step. Why that's important, if we remember when I came over to this end panel here, we pushed it out far enough so that it's actually level with the door. And if you see there, it's completely level with the door. But what I'm going to do is on the filler panels, I'm actually going to leave it flat. And the reason why I'm doing this is because it has a little taper here on the edge. If I pull this board back, you'll see we've got a little crease mark, or the little beveled edge where it begins lines up exactly with my 14 mil filler panel. So that's why I'm going to actually use it to install it this way. It's going to have a tiny little drop coming down, but because it's got a tapered edge on the profile of that door, it's not going to draw your eyes' attention, and it's not going to be an eyesore. If you have any other door, especially a squared edge or a flat edge on the edge of it, you can't do what I'm about to show you guys, and you're going to have to get a little bit creative. So I'll show you guys what you're going to have to do if you are picking a different profile. I'll just try and pick this up without dropping it. Of course I had to drop it anyway. So if you are going to use a different profile, what you have to do is pack this door out here about 4 mil. As we've got there roughly, that's about 4 mil. And then you get another piece. I'll just flip this one here around. So then your other piece is going to sit on top. You're basically going to create an L, but this one here is going to be packed out just a little bit. So you're going to have an L shape going in there. It's going to make it a little bit more complicated to install. It's definitely doable even for somebody who doesn't really know how to do it, but I'll leave that for another video. In this particular case, we're going to install it basically flat up against here. Luckily we've got that tapered edge, so it's going to save me, and you guys will be the judge once it's all installed if you would have packed it out or if you would have just stuck it on flat like I'm about to show you guys. So luckily, once again, we've got exactly a gap of 90 mil here. That's why I've got the piece of timber there. I was just checking to see what I'm going to use to support it. And you can see there it's dead square, everything's nicely pushed up against the walls. If anything, it's a little bit tight because it's holding up on its own. So we're going to use this, we're going to screw our end panel, or our filler piece, sorry, to this little board here, screw it in from the side, and that's going to sit nice and flat. Now we've also got two other issues. We've got a big hole on top that I want to cover. You don't have to, but if something drops down there, good luck getting it back out. So I'm going to cover that top section there off. Underneath we've got another gap as well, so once again I'm going to create another little filler panel for this side. So I'm going to do the bottom and top first, and then I'll come in last and just place my exposed edge or exposed face here straight over the top, and that's going to hide everything. So I'm going to quickly cut two pieces of timber at 200 wide, that way it's going to sit right there in the middle. You can see there the cabinet is 350, and we're going to keep our timber right there in the middle. The reason why I'm keeping it only in the middle is so that nothing else gets in the way when we're trying to screw everything. So 200 a piece for the bottom, 200 a piece for the top, just of 90mm timber. We're going to get that done, and then we're also going to cut down a piece at 90mm because we've got a 90mm spacing right there. Top and bottom is exactly the same. Luckily the walls are nice and plumb. If not, you're going to have to scribe the edge to make sure you've got a nice contour that's going to follow the line of the wall. But in this case here, perfect little plumb wall, 90mm filler panel on the bottom, same thing on top, and a 90mm exposed face right there. So I'm going to quickly cut those pieces up. Alright, so there's a lot of different ways that you can do this. You can be as creative as you like. This way here's going to work best for me. I'm going to pre-drill my locations first. So we've got my little 200 piece of scrap piece of timber. I've got a little piece of white filler that we're going to put for the base and for the top. I've also got a line marked there roughly at about 50mm in from the edge, that way I know exactly where to drill. And I've got it here on a flat surface so that they're both going to be 100% level with each other. Make sure your drill bit doesn't go too far in, and also your screws don't pop out the other side, otherwise you're going to have to start all over again. So this one here can go hard through, all the way to the edge. Switch over now and we'll drive a few screws through. So I'm not going to go all the way through just yet. I probably should have clamped this to begin with. Alright, I can feel it's actually in the hole. Alright, check your backside. Make sure you haven't gone all the way through, and this is one piece. I'm going to repeat the process on my second piece here. Alright, so now we've got two filler pieces, top and bottom. These ones here are going to go straight into the side of the cabinet, and I'll be able to screw straight into the side from the edge of the cabinet here. So we're going to start off with our bottom piece. We're going to drop this one here straight in. Nice and snug. Tap this one up to our location. Alright, that's looking perfect right there. Now remembering we measured in 60 from the edge here, so we know exactly where our timber is going to start, and we cut it at 200. So once again, we know exactly where we're working. Because I'm not so good on my left hand using the drill, I'm going to pre-drill these areas here. Hopefully I'll be able to do that with my left hand. I'll pre-drill it and then screw it all in. Alright, I won't overdrive it just yet until I get my second screw. But we're going to countersink these once again as we did with the rest of the screws, and then put one of those beautiful little white stickers over the top. Alright, that can be now countersunk. Alright, that's looking good. I'm going to do the same thing on our top piece now. Alright, so this is what it looks like so far. So now it's a continuation down the bottom. I don't really like the finish of these little cams here. I might finish it off with something else, but a little bit later. At the moment, everything's looking nice. That's all covered perfect. What we're going to do now is measure up the distance from top to bottom, and we're going to cut down a piece of filler, remembering that your cut edge needs to be up against the wall and the factory edge is going to be on the side here. So as long as you've got that lined up, You remember to cut on that side, measure it up, only up until the edge right here. And we're going to put one of those pieces of timber once again. That should be perfect. Alright, so I've got my piece cut now. I added about 2 to 3 millimeters extra. That way I'm going to make sure that it overhangs just slightly on the edge of our cabinet here. At the end of the day, you can always remove material, but you can't put it back. So always undercut. That way if you need to cut a little bit more, you can cut that little bit extra. But that's looking pretty good right there. What I'm going to do before I screw everything together is I'm going to actually install the door. Make sure that I've got enough clearance here and I don't need to shave down anymore. If I do need to shave just another mil or two, I might do that before I actually screw it all together. Alright, so I've got my door in and everything's looking really nice. It feels like an actual kitchen now. My panel is in place, I haven't cut it down yet. I just wanted to make sure of the size. And that is absolutely perfect. Very happy with that. I'm going to take off the door and we can now install this filler panel. Alright, so just before we screw this one here, make sure once again that your screw doesn't go all the way through. I know it sounds stupid and I'm on auto repeat, but you just have to be very, very careful. Otherwise you're going to have to start all over again, and I'm sure by this point in the video nobody wants that. So at this point here, if I countersink it just a little bit, that's going to bite about halfway through, and that's plenty for that. I'll put about 3 or 4 screws into this one here. Alright, so we're going to take our filler piece, slot this one here in, line it up with the cabinet, make sure you're happy with that. We're going to pre-drill it once again because I don't trust my left hand. Alright, so now that we've got this one here installed, I want to show you guys the difference between the two. Remembering that this one here wasn't protruding out, I recessed it just a little bit, and to me, honestly, I'm very, very happy with that. Definitely not worth the extra effort. And if I could go back, even if there wasn't any extra effort, honestly, I think I almost prefer it like this. So if you want an easy way out, buy the door with the little grooves on the side so it's rounded and it's not completely square, and you'll be able to do the exact same thing. But that's a really nice tight fit. So now I'm going to repeat the process on this bottom cabinet. It's just the face this time around because we've got stone going over the top. Same thing with that side there. That's the easy part done. Now that you guys know how to do the top, bottom and face, hopefully you guys will be able to do it as well. So to install the shelves is pretty straightforward. Each cabinet comes with a bag of goodies and comes with 2 shelves. Now, depending on whatever it is that you're going to put in the shelf, you might want to have 1 shelf or you might want to have 2. In my case, we're going to be having just 1 shelf in this one here, so I'll show you guys quickly how to put it in, just in case somebody doesn't know how to do it. Take the bag of goodies, and we've got a whole bunch of pins in here. So we're going to go halfway, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Drop a pin in there. We're not using the outer pin, we're using the second one in. Then you can take your shelf, drop that one there in, and it'll lock in underneath. There's a little groove, it'll just sit directly on those pins. Nice and simple. Do the same process for the rest of the cabinets. So it's now time to install the carousel for the corner cabinet, also known as a Lazy Susan. So we'll open up this box here and see what's inside. So we're going to start working on just one of these platforms here. So we'll get rid of this rail. And also this placemat. Alright, so if we have a look here, you can see one side has a sticker, so we know that there is the bottom. We're going to take this round base plate here and we're going to drop this inside it, so it only goes in one way, so you can't really get it wrong. So we're going to take that and push that in from the bottom. Once again, there's a little groove in there, so you can only get it in one way. Once we've got that on there, we'll take our locking nut and thread that one there on. make sure it's on nice and tight. We'll take these little pegs here. If you have a look, there's a little groove on one side. So we're just going to make sure this groove is facing onto the inside. Push all of these in. Alright, so once we've got all these pegs in, we can take one of these metal rail guards and open up our next bag here, which has a few more pieces, but I just don't want to lose these ones here. What we're going to take out of this is one of these, so just this little joiner or connector right here. We're just going to take that and then just connect our rail here, so you can see it's separated. Put one on one side and then one on the other side. Then we can take this and we're just going to click it on. So start on any side you like. And this all clips in from the inside, so it might be best to start off on a corner. Alright, so now we've got one complete. We're going to take this placemat, drop that one there on top. We'll move this one here to a side and we're going to repeat the same process for our second one. So now we've got both the platforms ready, we're just going to move them over to a side and we're going to start installing our brackets. So we're going to take our rod, our two brackets, screws and a drill, and we're going to go down to the bottom of this cabinet. So on the base of your cabinet you'll see there's two little holes. We're going to take the round base and we're going to take two screws and we're going to just simply attach this one here right into those holes. And up the top you'll see another two holes. We're going to take our other bracket and we're going to attach this one. So it's got a little flat section that sits up against the side. So once again, very hard to get this wrong. So now we can take both of these platforms or the shelves, slide them inside. Just drop it on top of that plug for now. We're going to put the other shelf straight over the top. And now we're going to take this metal tube. So if you look at the top here, you'll notice that you can actually pull one side out. Leave that one there tucked in. We're going to push the bottom side in first, straight down the middle and lock it into the bottom of that tube as well. So now we've got the tube just slipped over the top of the bottom bracket. We're going to pull this section here out now and we're going to slide it up into that top bracket. And you can see there we've got a variety of different holes and we're just going to line it up with that bottom one. Take the last screw, which is this one right here, and we're just going to put the screw straight through there. So now I'm going to lift the top shelf and you'll notice there's a bunch of pins on the bottom, or a bunch of holes. We're going to take that pin and just put it from the third one from the bottom, which is this one right here. Simply push that right through, and with the bottom shelf lift it up, there'll be a hole right down the bottom. Same thing, push that all the way through, drop it back down, and now we've got our Lazy Susan nicely installed. Alright, so it's now time to install all the doors. These are the easiest hinges and doors that you're ever going to do. Everything's pre-drilled, pre-marked, and these particular hinges, you don't even need screws for the main section on the door. I'll show you guys how these all go on. So you've got your two main bits. These two here go into the actual cabinet, which we'll go into in a second. And it also comes with a few little bumpers, so make sure you don't throw those away, put them aside, and you can put them right at the end. So simply take your hinges. You'll notice that it's got a little section here that's popped up. That's the way it's supposed to be. You've got two little lugs, simply drop them in the holes there. I find the best way to do this is to rock it left and right. They seem to go in a lot easier. Once it's completely flat, you want to push this down, and it is going to take a bit of force. That simply clicks in and you're ready to go. So we'll do the same thing on the other side. Once it's down nice and flat, click it in place. And now we'll move over to the cabinet. So if you're looking at the face of the cabinet, you can install the door on the left or on the right. It's exactly the same. You just flip the door over. And what you want to do is just line up your hinge location, which is generally the bottom and top lines for the holes. I'll bring you guys in a bit closer. So you can see there, if we line up the door right on the side, it lines up with those holes right there. So hopefully you guys can see those top holes right there, and it's also the bottom ones down the other side. So with these, you want to push these two lugs straight into both these holes, push it all the way in, and then tighten up with these two screws here, and that's going to lock in place. Now you can put it both ways, so you have to know which way is the correct way. And the easiest way I like to think about it is if you have a look right there on the edge, you'll notice there's a little groove, almost like two teeth. Hopefully you guys can see that there. Two teeth here. If we flip it around the other side, it's only got one tooth. So just that little section right there, a little bit easier to see when you're looking right at it. Two teeth, one teeth. So the two teeth need to face you. Easiest way to think about it, push these ones here in until they're flat. Same thing on the bottom. Tighten these ones here up. So now when you bring the door up close to it, you'll notice on the back here, hopefully you guys can see there, there's a little rail, and that sits right in between those two teeth. So you just need to line up that rail and then push it in, and that simply clicks in. Do the same thing on the bottom. Then you can close the door, and that there is the finished product. So we're going to repeat the exact same process for all of these cabinets right here, and I'll see you guys in a bit. So it's now time to assemble our drawer. We've only got one drawer in this particular case. So we've got our two sides, which are these ones here. We've got our base panel. We've got our dampener, our little bits and pieces and cover plates. Two top rails, our backing, and then our glides. So there's two glides as well. So first we're going to take our back piece. Make sure this little bottom lip here is facing you. Then you want to take your side pieces. You'll notice there's a little white piece of plastic on the back, as you guys can see there. And the little channel here needs to be facing in. So we know this side here is going to be our left side. So these just simply click together. You can do it on a flat surface, but I'm going to bring it in close so that I can show you guys. Just simply slides in. The back side wants to push through, push it together. So same thing on the other side. Click these ones here into place. Then we can put our piece down. So now we're going to take the base of the drawer. You'll notice one side has a little label and the channels. Flip that one over because that faces the bottom. And then we're just going to slide it in onto these guides here. Once you've got it in a little bit, then you can just push it all the way through. So now we're going to take our first screw, which is the largest one in here. It should be only one of these if you've only got one drawer. So that one right there. And this one here gets screwed into the back. So if you have a look there, there's a hole right in the middle. We're just going to simply put a screw straight through there. Now this hole here isn't pre-drilled, so if you like, you can pre-drill this one, or just take your time, and it'll go in just fine. So now we're going to attach our little clip here that slides into our glide. This one here needs to be facing down, so this little extra tongue section here, which is a little bit longer, sits down towards the edge of our door, which is in this case right here. And we're also using the top screw and the middle screw location, not this bottom one right here. The screws that we're using are these little short ones right here, and there's a whole bunch of them in the bag. So now we're going to install the top brackets for our top rails. These ones here go in the same direction, so longer side or pointy side facing down. It's going to be in the top hole, and we're also marking it in the same location, so screwing it in the top and the middle location and not the bottom. So drop these ones here in place. So we're just going to drop that in place, and once again we're using 4 of these same screws again. So now we can install the drawer front onto our little rails here, and we're going to use these metal clips that are down the bottom, and these ones here just simply push into place. So line it up. They click in just like that, and we're going to move over to our next step now. So now we can install the cover plates. You'll notice there's a little hole down the bottom here. Just make sure that one there is down towards the bottom. It simply just clips over the top, just like that. Same thing on the other side. And then you can take these little clips that it comes with as well in your bag of goodies, and that just simply slots into that little hole that I just showed you guys. It goes into one of those little grooves. If you wiggle it back and forward, you'll be able to push it in. If not, you can use a flathead screwdriver and just push that one down a little bit further. So now you can install these upper arms here that are going to add a little bit more support. One side's got a little lug on there that just simply clips into the top, and this bottom section here is marked left and right. So you can see this one here is the left side. When you're facing the drawer, this one here is going to be on the left. So you want to just clip this side here in and push the other side at the same time. It just simply sits in there nice and easy. And then with this one here, you can twist it to adjust the depth of your drawer in case this one here isn't sitting 100% straight, but it's looking pretty good in this case. Once you've done that, slide this guide straight over the top, and that's going to conceal everything. Do the same thing on the other side. Click it all in, slide this over the top, and we're done. So now I've got the drawer flipped upside down. We're going to install a little bracket here. So this isn't pre-drilled once again, so that means you just have to center it roughly. And if you want, you can pre-drill it or you can go straight through. We're using these 3 little screws right here. So now we're going to take our glides with our dampeners. Now these ones here, once again, are marked. You can see over there, it's got R for right. Same thing on our glides. We're just going to move this one here out of the way, slide it back a little bit, take the dampener, and we're just going to slot that straight over the top and then push out towards the back end. That should clip in, just like that. Repeat the same process on the other side, and that's now clicked in as well. So now you can put these cover plates over the top, same thing on the other side, and we can now install our glides. So depending on the drawer that you've purchased, once again, it's going to be in a different location depending on how many drawers. This one here only has 1 drawer down the bottom. And when we line it up, it's going to be sitting on our first hole, and we're going to put a screw into our first one, our third one over here, so the 2 outer ones, and they're pre-drilled, so it makes it easy to figure out. And once again, another one over here. We're using the same little short fat screws that come in the kit, so it shouldn't be too hard to work out which ones. Simply screw these ones here in. Repeat the same thing on the other side. Then you can take your drawer, drop it straight on top, push in until you hear a click. And that there is how to install the drawer. So it's now time to cut and install our kickboards. Now if we have a look here, this one doesn't reach all the way through. So there's a rubber seal on one side, that side goes down to the bottom. If we push this one here all the way to one side, you can see there my return or my corner. I need to put a joiner piece there. So what it comes with is this little thing here on the end. It's got one piece in the middle, which is our joiner, which we're going to need. So we're going to have to cut a piece, use the joiner to join the 2 on the outer ends. This one here and this one here, which I don't need anyway, is an end cap for a return. So you plug that into the back end of this side here if you've got a return, but we don't have a return. We're not an exposed corner anyway. So I need to cut a little bit extra so that we can make this fit perfectly. So I'm going to do a little bit of overkill. I'll push it in a little bit further, and I want my joint on this side here because that's the least obvious place. So I'll slide it back just a little bit, and if you have a look there, I'll try zoom in for you guys because it's going to be a little bit tight. But we've got 4 legs on the back. That's for our first cabinet, the pantry. And then we've got our next leg. So what I'm doing is putting my joint right in between the 2 legs so that we've got a bit more strength. So that end piece there that I'm about to cut, we'll have 2 clips for it, and then we'll be able to support the rest with the remaining clips. If you put a joint just on one leg, obviously it's not going to be as strong. So we're going to have 2 clips there on one end piece, which I've measured is 400 to the center of these 2 outer legs here. So I need to cut a piece at 400. Now to cut, let me just get up. To cut this, you need a hacksaw. So you can use a regular saw, but it's not going to be a clean cut. So if it's somewhere that's hidden, for example, if I was going to put my joint a little bit further that way, I would have had my raw cut on the backside there, which doesn't matter what it looks like. I can use a grinder if I like, just to cut that end piece. However, our factory edges are the best places for our joints. So that's why we're keeping our factory edge on the actual joint itself. The outer edge, I'm going to be using a hacksaw here. Now this is designed for metal, however, because it has very, very fine, small teeth, it's going to be the best for this little plastic material right here. So we're going to cut it with a hacksaw at 400 wide, and then we'll be able to attach our little clips, which I'll show you guys, and lock it all in place. So measure up your mark and then just cut away. So to join the 2 pieces together, you take your little adapter. It slides in this middle section here, which is actually pretty snug fit. It's got a little indicator for when you're halfway through. Squeeze them both together. And that there is how you create a joint. Now what I'm going to do is lie this on its back. You take your little clip, line it up with the foot. You just slot it in like this, and then we rotate it. So line it up with wherever the foot is, rotate that until it locks in place, and that one there is now ready to go. So we're going to just repeat the process on every single foot here. Line everything up, slide it in, and clip it all in place. And once that's done, we've got a nice little kickboard, easily installed, and it's looking pretty good. So once all the doors, drawers and shelves have been installed, this is what it ends up looking like. You can see my wife's already started to organize everything, making the most of the extra space that we've got now. These kickboards here are looking awesome. We've got a bit of a gap there between the door, which we're going to make minor adjustments towards the end. Microwave space goes right here. These doors here are a little bit shorter than the ones next to it. We've also got a filler panel on top, and this is the section where our sink is going to be installed. So this particular sink that we're installing is a white ceramic sink that has an exposed face. So that means from here to here is going to be an exposed face, or a farmhouse style sink. So that one there is hopefully going to look really nice. We've only got basically the knobs left to install. We've got our tiled splashback, our bench top, and our sink. So with regards to the bench top, you can obviously choose laminate or stone. In this particular case, we're going to be installing stone. My original intention was to cut everything at home and show you guys how to install and join it. The stone guys actually offered to cut it for free, so that's going to save me a lot of time. I'm pretty sure I've already got a few videos on how to join the stone and how to install it. If not, let me know in the comment section and I'll create another one. But it's pretty simple to do. As long as everything is nice, flat and level with one another, or your cabinets, you can put a little blob of silicone right here on all these joints right here. Same thing on the back, just a tiny little blob. Drop your bench top on top. Same thing on the other side. Make sure they're 100% level and in line with one another, because we've got one piece going here, another smaller piece going here, and we're going to have a joint going right along there. So as long as everything's level with one another, it's not going to move. It's going to be perfectly fine, especially with the weight of the stone, plus joining them both together, tiled splashback and sealing everything in with silicone. This thing is not going to go anywhere. The only reason why I'm giving you guys a bit of a oversight as to what we're doing is we're limited with space right here, and I'm not sure how much footage we're actually going to get. But it's pretty simple to do. If I don't have another video on it, let me know in the comment section and I'll create another one. But I'll see you guys in a bit. Alright, so the stone's finally in place. Like I said, there wasn't very much room in here at all. What you need to do is make sure that everything's sitting nice and plumb. So once this one here will calibrate, it should go back down to 0. Which that one is still calibrating, but there we go. So that's all sitting nice and level, everything's sitting nicely. Next thing you want to check is the joint right here. So you need to make sure that there's no transition or a lip from one side to the other. Make sure it's all nice and even all the way across. This one here still hasn't been joined, so we're just going to pull that one there apart, separate it, and I'm going to show you guys how to join it. But this part here is the absolute worst part of the whole project because it's so awkward, heavy, and difficult to move around. But now that we've got this one here ready, I'm going to spread it apart as much as I can, and then we're going to fill this joint, push it all back together, clamp it down, and that there is going to be a nice little joint. So to join everything together, the product that we're using is 10X right here. Awesome little product, and this one here will set in probably about 30-40 minutes. So we've got a hardener as well. Now you can tape this off. Some people like to tape off the edges and then work it all in, peel the tape back, but there's not really much point, to be 100% honest. You just want to mix that hardener through. Alright, so once you've got it all mixed up, you want to apply to both sides. So just push that product all the way in. Push a stone into place. Then you can take a little razor blade and just clean off most of that excess there. Double check your levels, make sure everything's sitting nice and flush. We'll let this one here sit for a bit. If you've got any voids, just quickly fill those ones there up. You want to always use a fresh razor blade so you don't damage your surface. We'll let this one here sit for about 5-10 minutes. It'll start to go hard, then we can clean everything off. So the reason why I use a razor blade is you can see there it's nice and sharp and dead flat. That's what I'm after. That way we're going to make sure that we've got that nice transition, no lippage whatsoever going from one piece to the other. It's going to be 100% flat, and we're also going to be able to use this to remove all that excess material. So you can see there's a little bit of mess all the way around that joint. With the knife you can clean that off really easily, especially before it goes completely hard. So at the moment it's still a little bit tacky. We're going to give it a couple more minutes, because if it's still tacky and you try to remove it even with a fresh blade, you might remove some of that material out of the joint, and then you're going to have to just repeat the process again. So if you happen to find a few pockets or divots in your work and you're not happy with it, simply clean everything off, reapply the material once again, and just wait for it to dry and cut it out again. So now it's firm enough to start removing the excess material. I like to start just on one edge, run that all the way down on a little bit of an angle, and make sure that you're cutting and not actually pulling out the material. So you can see that it's coming off in a nice little sheet. We'll put that on the side because it's not so tacky anymore. Come up again on the other side and slide your blade all the way down. A little bit hard to do from this angle because I'm trying to stay out of the camera. Might actually have to block the camera's view just a little bit. Have a quick look, make sure you haven't missed anything, because if this thing sets really hard, it's going to be hard to remove that material off. I'm very happy with that. We'll let this one here cure, and then we'll come back tomorrow and we'll continue on with this project. So we're back now the following day. The joint here is nice and hard, ready to go. We're going to start tiling today. So the first thing we need to do is quickly mask off this bench top and put some drop sheets down. So I've got all the bench tops covered. I've laid out some tiles here just to see what the configuration is going to be like. I've measured up my distance from one end to the other, divided that by 2, and that's going to give me a starting point right here in the middle. And the reason I do that is because when I get to the edges now, I'm going to have the same size cut on both sides, which is going to make things look a lot nicer and cleaner. With these tiles here, they're irregular in shape, which means that the edges aren't square. You can see that it's got a big wave on either edge. The face is textured and the back also isn't flat. So this one here rocks back and forward. It just simply means it's not designed to give you a dead, flat, crisp, level line. It's going to wave in and out. It's going to give it a rustic, natural kind of look. If you're using Moroccan tiles, which are handmade, good luck, have fun with that. You're gonna have to butter every back of the tile, put it in, and you're gonna have to just simply spend a lot more time. But these ones here, still, we need to eyeball everything because it dips in and out. Make sure that we're getting it as level as possible. That's why I've got my laser level here, just to give me a bit of a guide to make sure I'm not going out of whack too much. Now with the spacing here, I've played around with the different thicknesses of spacing for my grout line, and what I've decided to do is to use a spacer just as a guide. So I'm not going to actually leave it in there as a spacer. I'm just simply using it to score between the tiles, and that's going to make sure that I've got a minimum clearance and I'm not overblowing the grout lines out. Because it dips in and out, I want to keep my smallest grout line at 1.5 mil. Anywhere where it dips back in or out on the other side, it's going to come out just a little bit. It'll flare probably up to about 3 millimeters. So the maximum I should have is about 3 millimeters of spacing, and the minimum is going to be about 1.5. So in this case, we're going to be tiling straight onto plasterboard. So there's a couple things you need to keep in mind. Number one is if you have any raw joints or patchwork, make sure that you use a sealer first to make sure that you seal that surface, and that'll ensure that your adhesive actually sticks to the wall properly. Number two, don't overload tiles onto the wall. Don't exceed the weight limit. So every manufacturer has a different weight limit. In this particular case from CSR, the maximum we can load up our walls with tiles is 32 kilos per square meter. So as long as you're not exceeding 32 kilos per square meter with this particular product, you won't have any issues. I'm going to quickly mix up a small batch of adhesive and we're going to start tiling. So I'm using a 6mm trowel, and you've got two options. You can either apply it straight to the wall, or you can just simply butter the back of the actual tile itself. I'm also using a couple spaces on the bottom just to give it a bit of clearance from the bench top, and we're going to fill that in with silicone a little bit later on. Line it up with our center mark here, and we're also going to keep an eye on our laser level. So that's looking pretty good right there. We'll squeeze that one in, give it a couple twists. Make sure it's sitting nicely. That's looking pretty good right there. We can take out that excess material from the top. That way, if we want to have a break halfway through, we can leave it as is, come back, and we'll continue on, and we don't have any crusty little bits of adhesive on the wall that we need to remove. So that's looking pretty good. We'll just continue on. Now, like I said, with the gap here, we're going to take our little 1.5mm spacer. Hold this one here in place, and I'm just going to slide this one here all the way down. That's going to make sure that I've got a minimum of 1.5mm, and you can see there where it bows just a little bit on top. That's now out at about 2.5mm. So that one there's sitting nice and perfect. We'll move on over to the next one. Alright, so the first level is now complete. This is the worst part of the whole process because you need to get everything level and lined up, plus leaving a gap on the bottom with a little bit of clearance there. Now that we've got this section here, everything will go a lot faster and we can just work our way straight up. I'm just going to line this laser level here right on the joint there. So I'll start off in the middle once again, and I'll work my way out on both sides and just continue along. Hopefully another hour or so and this whole section here should be complete. So once the tiling's complete, this is what it ends up looking like. That laser level made the world of difference. I was able to keep everything nice and consistent with those grout lines. Even with the regular tiles, everything's looking pretty spot on at the moment. So I've got some grout mixed up. This here is the brand and the color that we're using today in case anybody out there is interested. All you need is a rubber float like this one here. This is going to help you spread the material out over the tiles and push it into the joint. You want to go on a bit of a diagonal action. That way you're going to make sure you're pushing it into the joint. Let it sit for about 10-15 minutes. It'll start to form a white haze over the top. At that point, you take a wet sponge and you want to just remove that excess material off the top of the tiles. It's a very simple process. You're going to have to repeat the cleaning process a couple times until your tiles are actually nice and clean and you've got a nice clean grout line. So apply the grout to the wall, go up on a bit of a diagonal action. You can hear it squeaking away because these are gloss tiles and the float is rubber. So you want to just push that material all throughout. Sweep over the top on a bit of a diagonal action. And that's going to make sure that you've pushed everything into that joint line. Repeat that process all throughout here. So you can see that it's starting to form a haze. You want to take your sponge at this point. Once again, go on a diagonal action. And what you're going to do is not only remove that excess material that's on the surface of the tile, but you're also going to smooth out these grout lines. So just go in a couple different directions. Don't do it too much because you want to not remove that grout out of the grout line. You might have to repeat the process 4 or 5 times. And for your final clean, you can use a little bit of cleaning vinegar and some warm water. That's going to be the best way to clean off your tiles. But for now, we'll let this one here sit for a bit, build a haze, and then we'll repeat the process a few times until everything's nice and clean. So it's now the following day. This is what it ends up looking like once it's all dry and everything's been cleaned up. I'm really happy with the tiling work. The bench top looks awesome. The only issue that I'm having is putting them both together. I'm not too sure if it actually works or not. But let me know in the comment section what you guys think. Worst case scenario, a little bit down the track, I might have to do a video on how to tile on top of tiles if by the end of this I'm still not happy with it. But I think once we put the tap, the knobs and also the sink in, it might change things around a bit. The next thing we're going to be doing now is applying silicone to all these little joints here. So between the bench top and the tiles, also in the corner, we need to apply a little bit of silicone. I've got plenty of videos on how to apply silicone already online, so to save a bit of time out of this video, if you guys want to learn how to do that step by step, I've got plenty of videos on how to do it. One thing though I am going to show you guys is the profiling toolkit, because I haven't actually addressed this little section of the profiling tool in any of the other videos. So when we apply the silicone here between the bench top and the tiles, you'll notice that there's a little grout line here where the joint between the tiles is. These are the standard profiling tools that I like to use. Every corner has a different radius or a different number to indicate how thick that radius is. All you need to do is just simply get the size that you need, and the easiest way to work this out is by just going around, drop that corner on the side there, and you want to just make sure that you're going to have a nice tight radius. So the smaller the better, but what you need to do as well is go around and make sure you're going to cover everything. You can see here we've got a bit of a gap there, so once again we need to make sure that this section here will actually cover it. Usually I like to use a 5mm, but in this case I'm going to be using an 8. And what I haven't addressed in the previous videos for applying silicone is how to prevent the little bumps that you're going to get in your silicone when you're running up against the tiles, because as we drag this profiling tool along, you can hear that little knock. Every single time we get to a joint on the grout line, the silicone's going to dip in and out, and that's going to give you an uneven profile all the way along. So the way you get around this is by using the red ones, and you can see there's a little missing section here. What we need to do, once again, we'll grab that 8mm, which is the bottom one, this one right here, and this edge or the side that's going to be facing the tiles, you want to grab one of these black feet. All right, and you just simply clip that onto the end. A little bit hard to do with just one hand, but I'll try and get that in. All right, and what that does is it just basically bridges over the top of that joint there. So as you run your profiling tool over, it no longer bumps. You can see it just glides nice and easy all the way across. And that's what that little foot is for. So hopefully if you guys are having any trouble with silicone or you're not too sure on how to do it, check out that video. But for now I'm going to quickly apply the silicone here and I'll see you guys on the next step. So it's now time to install the knobs or handles on your cabinet doors. In this particular case I like to use this little jig right here. It makes life much easier and it prevents the chance of making mistakes. So for about $30 investment, definitely worth it. I've got a separate video on how to use this in case you guys are interested. For this particular case here, we actually won't be using the full jig, and the reason for that is in order to get the right size where I need my location, I need to remove the door, and I'm really not in the mood this late at night to remove all the doors. So what I'm going to do is just a quick little shortcut way. So in this case I'm extremely lucky because the width of this little bracket here is exactly the width of my little profile right here. So I'm going to be able to use the top guide, which I've already adjusted down to 25 mil, and in terms of the depth or the width, this one here is already centered on the center of this little track here, which actually sits right on my profile. So all I have to do is just line it up with the profile and I've now got my location. So for me, this one here is going to do the trick right now because I really don't feel like removing all these doors. So I hold this one here in place. I've got my drill bit ready to go. We've got a 4mm drill bit and we're just going to drill straight through. If you've got an old drill bit, make sure you use a pilot bit first, which basically means go through with a small drill bit first on this side and then follow through with a larger drill bit. That's going to prevent any kind of blowout, but we've got a brand new drill bit here, so we shouldn't have any issues with that. Make sure I'm happy with my location, drill it straight through the middle. Make sure your fingers aren't in the way. Once you've gone all the way through, it's a very simple process. We take our little knob here, take the little bag of goodies that it came with, feed that screw straight through the back, attach our little knob here, and then we're going to follow through with the drill. So whether you're using a drill or you're using a screwdriver, doesn't really matter, just be careful and that's all you have to do. Tight enough. So that's one done. We're going to repeat the same process on every single door here. That's why I wasn't in the mood to remove all these doors. So once the handles have been installed, this is what it ends up looking like. Everything's starting to tie in nicely now. The only thing we've got left to do now is the sink, tap, and we're pretty much done. So now it's time to install the tap. This one here, once again, is an Ikea tap. Surprisingly pretty nice. That's the tap that we're going to be installing. And everything that you need is actually inside this box, which is actually really good. Even our tube spanner here, which is in a screwdriver shaped design, which is going to make things a lot easier. I'm going to connect everything right now except for the actual hoses. We'll leave that till right at the end. But to install this one here, it's got a couple fittings inside and it's honestly really simple to do. I'll quickly pull these ones here out. So we've got a little plastic bracket, rubber washer, metal washer, our long threaded screw here, and also a nut. So just have a look down the base of it here. One side's going to have a little Phillips head section and the other side doesn't. So the side that has the Phillips head on it, that's going to be facing the bottom. So we'll just quickly unscrew this nut here, put that on a side, and we're going to take this little threaded rod here and we're just going to thread it straight into the base of it. So you can see right there, there's a little section for it. Once again, remembering that the Phillips head section is down the bottom. Tighten it all the way up. We then take our little cover plate here, slide the hoses through there just one at a time because you won't be able to slide both at the same time. That sits on top just like this. And on the base of this little cover plate here, it's also got the rubber seal, so just make sure that's actually still in there and hasn't fallen out going into the box. We're going to slide it in through the hole. Once again, one at a time. Roughly position it where you want it. In this case, we're going to have the handle on the right here. You can see it wants to topple over on its own. So I'm just going to twist this over to the other side and hopefully that'll, there we go. So just counterbalance, so that's going to hold it in place until I get everything sorted out. sorted out. Our rubber washer and our spacer and metal little spacer as well is what we're going to be using next. So this one here has a little groove on top. You want to drop your rubber spacer on there, or rubber washer. That way it's going to clamp up underneath the bench top from underneath, and this little rubber washer here is going to press up against the stone or the laminate depending on what you have. Our metal one is going to go on the base, just like that. Now all you need to do is just simply slide these two little holes that we've got here, line that up with the screw that we put in from underneath as well, push that all the way through, take our locking screw and we're going to clamp that on. So slide it all through, then we can put the nut on by hand, get it all hand tight, make sure you're happy with the positioning, and then you can follow through with your tube spanner. Slide that up over the threaded rod and we're just going to tighten up that nut. Once that's done, we've now got the tap installed. We're going to leave the hoses for later on. We're going to now install the sink quickly. So to install the sink is actually very easy, especially with this design here, because it's a drop-in sink, which means it basically sits on top of the bench top rather than being an undermount. And that's very important if you wanted to do this yourself from home, because you can cut this stone yourself. It can be raw cut. It doesn't have to be perfect because the sink is going to be sitting on top. So now that I've got everything sitting in nicely, what I'm going to do is take a pencil and I'm just going to quickly trace around the edges here. Give myself a little marking. Alright, so that's going to give me a guide as to how much silicone to put. Now usually I put the strainer in first and then drop everything in because it's easier to do the strainer when it's outside. But with this one here, I'm actually going to use the hole in the base here to be able to lift it and carry it, maneuver it around without getting my hands dirty. Also with these sinks here, because they're ceramic, they're not always 100% level. Sometimes people install them. Actually, we've got a spot rock there. So you can see how it rocks. They're never 100% level. That's why what we do is we remove it, fill this all up with a thick bead of silicone, drop it on top lightly. You don't want to put too much pressure. Put a level over the top of it and then push it down as needed. Clean off all the edges, let it set, and that's it. It's very simple to do. We'll quickly remove this one here out of the way. So I've got my silicone here ready. We're going to apply our thick bead of silicone. And I do mean thick. If you don't put enough silicone, the weight of the sink alone is just going to make that silicone all ooze out and it won't be sitting level. Can put a little bit here as well. Not going to do any harm. So now we've got a nice thick bead of silicone. We're going to take that sink, push it in slowly. And then just lower it down very slowly. It will start to ooze out, but we're going to play with it in a second. Take that level. That is absolutely perfect right there. On the back, that is spot on. I'm not going to move anything. If it was a little bit more out of level, you can push and play with it as you need. Now we're going to take, once again, our silicone profiling tool. So I'll just grab a little bit of cardboard, or actually we can use the little instruction manual here. With regards to the cutout for the sink, it's very easy to do yourself as well. With the sink itself, it comes with diagrams and instructions for you to be able to do this yourself. So you're not going to get stuck. It's going to be very easy to do. I might actually bring you guys in a little bit closer. So with the profiling tool, you simply start on one end, work it all the way around. Take that excess, use the instruction manual, and that'll give you a nice perfect finish right there. Clean up any excess that might be left behind, repeat the process all the way around. So once you've smoothed everything off using the profiling tool, you're left with a nice perfect bead of silicone all the way around. And that there is the finished product. So we're gonna let this one here sit until tomorrow morning so everything dries off, it becomes nice and firm. Then we'll install our strainer, connect all our piping, and we're pretty much done. So it's now time to install the strainer. You gotta love IKEA. Everything is super simple, even with their instructions that have absolutely no words. You can work out exactly what needs to be done. Now, with the strainer, I personally opt to use silicone most of the time rather than using just the rubber seals. That's going to give you a nice permanent seal and you're not going to have to worry about the seal failing. But in this particular case, I'm going to install it as per the instructions, simply because I'm actually going to swap this one here out for a brass one. But basically all you've got is a little foam washer or pad that sits up here. So that's a little seal on your top part of the strainer. Drop that one straight in from the top. This bottom section here, all right, all you need to do is just hold it from underneath. You take your little grub screw here and you drop that in from top. That's going to clamp them both into place. I'll actually show you before I do it because it's going to be a little bit hard. Once again, you've got another seal down the bottom, so make sure that's installed as well. Basically from under the sink, this one here sits on top. We take our little screw here, thread that one there on by hand initially. Then we use a little key that it comes with, drop that one in and you can tighten everything. That's going to squeeze it all into place. Now with our bottom section here, it comes standard at 40 mil and you've also got an adapter for a 50 mil. So if you're putting in a 50 mil, which we are in this case, just make sure the little O-ring is in there as well. This is the world's thinnest O-ring that I've ever seen. That one simply goes over the top. And that's ready to go. So we're going to quickly install this one here now. All right, so we'll drop this one here in on top. This one can go on the bottom. And we'll get ready to clamp this one here into place. All right, so you want to get it down, say about 90% of the way. But before you completely tighten everything, so that's about 90% there. And you can see I can still move it around just slightly. Depending on the actual sink that you've got, some of them are recessed a little bit wider, which means that this can sit a little bit off center. So you always want to make sure that it is in fact center and you're happy with the position, then tighten everything into place. That's nice and tight. We take our actual strainer now, and that can sit on top. Lock it down in order to block the sink, open it up, nice and simple. But once again, I'm going to be replacing this one with a brass one. Alright, so it's now time to hook up the water. Make sure you turn off your main water from outside and turn on the tap that's at the lowest point of the house. That way it's going to drain out most of that water. Now for this one here, these have been on for probably a good couple months. Actually, I'll take that back, it's been over a year. So they're actually pretty loose, which is a good thing. We'll quickly unscrew the threads. I can hear that water rushing out there, or gurgling away. Alright, so that's our cold on the right, hot is on the left. Now we've also got some cover plates that we're going to put on here. So we'll put those ones there on first. Put on some Teflon tape, and then we're going to install a shut-off valve. So it just looks like that. When you put your Teflon tape on, or your plumber's tape, always put it in a clockwise direction, because that's the direction that the actual shut-off valve is going to go on as well. Alright, we can now tighten this one here up with a wrench. Repeat the same process for our hot water. Alright, we'll switch both of these off. We'll turn our main water supply on. Make sure that everything here is fine and there's no leaks, and then we can move over to the next step. Alright, so the water's back on, everything's nice and dry, we've got no leaks here. The next thing we're going to do is, in this particular case, we've got a fridge connection or a fridge water connection. So we've just got a little adapter here that sits right on top of this. Now we don't need any plumber's tape or Teflon tape for this one, because it's got a little seal in there already, so we don't need to worry about that. Thread this one here on, tighten it up with the wrench. So once that's attached, we can now connect our actual water hoses. So remembering the hot is on the left, cold is on the right. Once again, these ones here have an O-ring inside there, or a rubber seal, so you don't need to worry about Teflon. Put that on, once again, tighten it up using the wrench. Repeat the same process for the cold. So I need to cut the cap off before I can install my cover plate and connect my drainage. Cover plate can go on top. So now we can connect our trap. This one here is a 50mm trap. We're just going to put it on about 95% of the way. Make sure that we can still maneuver this one here around to get our right configuration. Now we still need to join down the bottom. So we're going to use an elbow down here. Now this is all just temporary until we make our cuts. If we measure distance down, in this case here we've got 130. And once again we need to work out our distance from here, which is a piece at 70mm. So 130 and 70. So once again, apply your primer. This time around we're using a clear primer to keep things a little bit cleaner. Apply some glue. Once again, the glue is clear. Then we can slip over our locking ring, our little seal here. Swing this up and over. And tighten it all on. Tighten up the rest of your fittings. And once it's all done, this here is the finished product. I'm super impressed with this. You'd honestly never know that this was an IKEA kitchen. Everything looks awesome. Everything was very simple to install. However, it does take a lot of time. So be prepared that it's a lengthy process, but definitely worthwhile. You're going to save yourself a lot of money by doing it all yourself. Super happy with this. You'd honestly never know that this is an IKEA kitchen. Everything looks tip top, really, really nice. Very happy with that. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. The tiles and the bench top, do they work together? It's kind of grown on me now, and I honestly kind of like it. But let me know what you guys think. Should I keep it as is? Does it work with the bench top, or should I pick something completely different and show you guys how to tile on top of tiles? Hopefully you guys have all enjoyed this video. It's been a very long video, but hopefully you're going to gain a lot out of this and it's going to benefit a lot of people. As always, guys, like, comment, and subscribe. Until next time, I'm Bill. Thanks for watching Bill's How To.